There is a moment in every person's life when something shifts, quietly, without warning, and nothing ever feels the same again. You don't hear a voice from the sky, you don't see a light part the clouds, but something inside you changes, and years later, when you look back, you realize that was the exact point where everything began. The scholars of the inner path, the ones who spent their lives studying not just the words of scripture, but the hidden meanings beneath them, believe that Allah does not choose people the way the world chooses people. The world chooses the loudest, the richest, the most visible. Allah chooses the ones who are breaking. He chooses the ones who feel forgotten. He chooses the ones sitting alone at 2 a.m, wondering if their prayers are even being heard. And one of the deepest voices to ever speak on this subject was a man named Ibn Arabi, a mystic whose entire life was devoted to understanding what happens in the unseen space between a servant and their creator. He wrote that the signs of being chosen rarely look like blessings when they first appear. They look like loss. They look like silence. They look like a slow unraveling of everything you thought your life was supposed to be. And if you are watching this right now, if something in you felt a pull just from hearing that sentence, stay with me, because we are about to walk through 5 signs, 5 unmistakable signs that Allah has already begun choosing you, even if you cannot see it yet. Before we go further, I want you to think honestly about your own life for a moment. Has there been a season recently where everything felt like it was falling apart, yet somehow you were still standing? Has there been a night where you cried until you had nothing left, and yet the next morning you still got up and moved forward? That is not weakness. That is not coincidence. According to the mystics, that is architecture. That is Allah building something inside you that could not be built any other way. Keep that thought in your mind, because by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why your pain has not been random. The first sign is isolation that you never asked for. Not loneliness in the ordinary sense, but a specific, strange kind of distancing where people you once felt close to slowly drift away. Where friendships that used to feel effortless begin to feel forced. Where you find yourself sitting in rooms full of people and still feeling completely alone. This is one of the most misunderstood experiences a person can go through, because the ego tells you something is wrong with you. It tells you that you have failed socially, that you have become bitter, that you have changed for the worse. But Ibn Arabi and the scholars who followed his path describe this differently. They believe that before Allah draws someone close to him, he first empties the space around them. He removes the noise. He removes the distractions disguised as friendships. He removes the comfortable conversations that used to fill your time but never fed your soul. This emptying is not punishment. It is preparation. Think about it like this. You cannot pour clean water into a cup that is already full of something else. Before Allah fills your heart with nearness to him, he has to empty it first. And that emptying often looks like people leaving, plans falling apart, and silence where there used to be noise. If you have felt this in your own life, if you have wondered why the people who used to matter to you feel distant now, understand that this is not abandonment. This is the sound of your heart being cleared to hold something greater. And once it happens, once you stop panicking about the silence and start listening to what it's trying to teach you, you begin to notice something remarkable. In that silence, your prayers start to feel different. Your late nights start to feel less empty and more intentional. You start talking to Allah the way you used to talk to the friends who left. That shift alone is proof that something is being rebuilt inside you, brick by brick, in a foundation that no person could ever provide. The second sign is a repeated, almost relentless stripping away of things you were once attached to. Money that used to come easily suddenly becomes difficult. A relationship you thought was permanent ends without warning. A dream you had built your identity around collapses, seemingly for no reason. This is where most people break, and understandably so, because from the outside it looks like failure. It looks like bad luck. It looks like a string of misfortunes with no purpose behind them. But those who studied the deeper meanings of hardship in the Islamic tradition understood this pattern very differently. They saw it as detachment being forced upon the soul, because attachment to anything other than Allah eventually becomes a barrier between a person and their purpose. Ibn Arabi spoke extensively about the heart's need to be free from dependence on created things, because as long as your sense of security rests in money, in people, in status, in achievements, you will never fully turn toward the one who created all of those things in the first place. So when those things are taken, even painfully, even in ways that feel unfair, there is a hidden mercy inside the loss. Allah is not punishing you. He is unhooking you from things that were never meant to hold the full weight of your heart. Ask yourself honestly, if everything you currently rely on for comfort disappeared tomorrow, would you still know how to find peace? For most people, the answer is no, and that is exactly why the stripping away happens. It is not cruelty, it is liberation disguised as loss. And the people who eventually come out on the other side of this stripping, the ones who stop clinging and start surrendering, describe a peace afterward that they had never experienced before, a peace that does not depend on their bank account or their relationship status or their career, a peace that stays steady no matter what the outside world looks like. That kind of peace does not come from having more, it comes from needing less, and needing less only happens after everything unnecessary has been removed. The third sign is an increasing sensitivity to sin, even sins that used to feel small or unimportant. Something as minor as a careless word, a moment of gossip, a wasted hour scrolling through your phone begins to weigh on you in a way it never used to. You start noticing your own flaws more clearly. You start feeling uncomfortable in situations that never used to bother you. Many people mistake this for anxiety or an unhealthy level of guilt, but the scholars of the spiritual path saw this as one of the clearest signs of divine attention. When Allah begins to draw someone closer, He gives them a heightened awareness of their own heart. The heart becomes like a mirror that used to be covered in dust, and as that dust is wiped away, even the smallest marks become visible. This is why the closest servants to Allah throughout history were known for weeping over sins that most people would consider insignificant. It was not because they were more sinful than everyone else. It was because their hearts had become clear enough to see clearly. If you have noticed this happening in your own life, if things that never used to bother your conscience now sit heavy on your chest, this is not a sign of becoming worse. It is the opposite. It is a sign that the veil over your heart is thinning, and what once passed unnoticed now demands your attention because your soul has begun to wake up. The fourth sign is an unexplainable pull towards solitude, prayer, and reflection, even when your schedule and your social circle push you in the opposite direction. You start craving quiet moments. You start finding yourself wanting to pray longer than usual, wanting to sit with the Quran even without a specific reason, wanting to walk alone at night just to think. This pull is rarely convenient. It often arrives at the busiest, most demanding seasons of your life, when you have the least amount of free time and the most responsibilities pulling at your attention. And yet somehow, you make time for it anyway, because something inside you insists on it. Ibn Arabi described this pull as the soul recognizing its true home. He believed that the human heart, before it ever entered this world, existed in a state of closeness to the divine, and that closeness leaves a kind of memory embedded deep within us, a memory we cannot consciously recall but that surfaces as a longing. That longing is what pulls you towards solitude. It is what makes silence feel more comforting than conversation. It is what makes a few minutes of prayer feel more satisfying than hours of entertainment. If you have felt this pull growing stronger in your own life, do not fight it, and do not feel guilty for wanting to step away from the noise of the world. That pull is not isolation for its own sake. It is your soul trying to return to the one relationship that was always meant to come first. The fifth and final sign is the hardest one to accept, and it is this. Your prayers may feel unanswered for long stretches of time, sometimes for years, and yet you continue asking anyway. This is where faith is truly tested, because the human mind naturally expects that sincere effort should produce quick results. When it doesn't, doubt creeps in. You start to wonder if you are being ignored, if your prayers are falling on deaf ears, if perhaps you don't deserve what you're asking for. But this delay, according to those who studied the deeper wisdom behind trials, is one of the most profound forms of closeness a servant can experience. Because in that waiting, in that uncertainty, you are forced to return to Allah again and again, not because you received what you wanted, but because you needed Him regardless of the outcome. That repetition builds something that instant answers never could. It builds a relationship based on trust rather than transaction. Ibn Arabi wrote about this delay as a form of divine love disguised as distance, because the longer Allah delays an answer, the more opportunities He is giving you to call upon Him, and every single one of those calls draws you nearer, whether or not you can see the result yet. If you have been waiting for something for a long time, if you have prayed for the same thing over and over without seeing it happen, understand that the waiting itself may be the point, not the punishment, not the neglect, the point. Because a person who only turns to Allah when things are going well has a shallow relationship with their Creator, but a person who continues turning to Him through years of silence has built something unshakable. Now think back to everything we just walked through. The isolation that felt like loss was actually a clearing. The stripping away of what you were attached to was actually a liberation. The heightened sensitivity to your own flaws was actually your heart waking up. The pull towards solitude was actually your soul remembering where it came from. And the unanswered prayers were actually literally building a relationship deeper than any instant answer ever could. None of this was random. None of this was punishment. If you have recognized even one of these signs in your own life over the past months or years, you are not being abandoned. You are being prepared quietly, patiently, for something you may not fully understand yet, but something that is undeniably real. So here is what I want you to take from this. Stop interpreting your hardest seasons as evidence that you are far from Allah. Start interpreting them as evidence that something is being built inside you that could never survive comfort. Keep praying even when the answer doesn't come. Keep sitting in the silence even when it feels heavy. Keep noticing your own flaws and correcting them instead of ignoring them. Because every single one of these moments, the ones that feel the hardest right now, may one day be the exact moments you look back on and recognize as the beginning of everything. If this resonated with you, sit with it for a moment before you move on to anything else today. Let it settle. And if you know someone who is currently in one of these seasons, someone who feels lost, someone who feels like their prayers aren't being heard, share this with them. Because sometimes the only thing a person needs to keep going is the reminder that their struggle has meaning.